Hey, folks, welcome back to the Land Fixer podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Logan Swanson. Today we have a real treat. Joining us, we have Karl Spielvogel. Hi, say hi to everybody.
Hello, how you guys doing?
Doing good. All right. Before we get into it, as always, folks, remember if you need funding for your land flips, land subdivisions, land developments, land entitlement projects, reach out to us at www.landpartnerfunding.com, or you can email me hello@landpartnerfunding.com. If you're a landowner and you are looking to get the highest return possible on your property and you're considering maybe some sort of development project or improvement project and you're looking for some seasoned hands to partner with, you can reach out to me at thelandfixer@gmail.com. I'll happily guide you through the process. And I think that's it. Karl, welcome to the show. Glad to have you. Could you tell us a little bit about who you are and how you're related to this whole land industry?
Who am I? Karl Spiel. We take on problems. This is what we do in the land stuff. We do everything from creative land subdividing to buying properties with judgments. We love deceased owners and tracking down the heirs. And we have multiple ways to make money on those deals, whether we end up doing a partition sale, clear the title. We do variances on land. We're starting to do quiet titles, color of title, just just anything variant, just anything that's weird and a little bit outside the realm is what we do. But we how we find most of our deals though is property tax delinquents. That seems to be the best source we have for finding land deals.
Oh, interesting. You answered my first question. I always try to figure out how are people finding their leads. So do you operate in a specific area? I know I've talked to you about North Carolina before.
Yeah, mainly North Carolina.
Okay.
And then how we find our stuff is we pull down all the tax delinquent leads. So we'll pull them all down. We sort them. We bulk skip them by, we use this bulk skip service and we skip them and we get all the people that are deceased. So we have one pile, which is the deceased owners, and one people pile that's the people that are alive. And then the people that are deceased, we'll pull the obituaries, we'll look for the heirs, we'll check estate files, and the ones with the most equity, we take them on as cases and we work them. And those are the best deals typically where someone's deceased and then there's a value add with the land. Like you can subdivide it and maybe there's a judgment or a problem. Those tend to be the most profitable deals.
Interesting. Yeah, I kind of wondered. I don't think the response rate's very high for the deceased folks, so I guess that makes sense that you would track down some errors, right? Is that pretty time intensive, or is your team usually able to go through a list like that pretty quickly?
Our team will go through it. We have virtual assistants that can pull the obituaries, build the trees, check for the estate files. We got a lot of great skip trace programs, breakthrough genealogists that can work the deal. So maybe 15 to 20 minutes to get started on each of the deals.
Interesting. So you're going to build a list. I mean, how big are these lists? Say you have a deceased column, and I'm guessing you're going county by county for records. I mean, are these in the hundreds or thousands?
It all depends on the county, the situation. On some of the bigger counties, maybe it'll be like 300 to 400 people that are deceased that own properties, quite a bit. Um,
Okay.
it
Yeah.
depends
So
on the list and the area, but there's huge amount, especially with land. There tends to be more people with land that are deceased.
Okay. So if you're going through, I guess what I imagine if I was in your shoes, I would actually start first by kind of evaluating the property to make sure it's even worth reaching out for. Is that where you begin? You're like, all right, this is a piece of junk. I wouldn't buy this whether they're alive or dead. Is that your first step?
Yeah. Well, we basically we pull like the tax value, or we'll run it through prop stream to get the value. Then we also have the number of years delinquent and the amount. So we'll start with the ones with the most equity. Like this one's worth 400,000, and they owe like 30 grand in taxes. There's like 3 or more years behind. Then that's the one that we're going to target.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense because then you're cherry picking, right? You're like, all right, we're
Yes,
we're gonna go where the meat is.
exactly.
And this is all free information, right? I mean, you're reinventing some processes, but this lead flow, I mean,
Anybody could do this, but it does take a while to get the process and the flow down and the research, you know.
okay.
But anyone can do this. So
All right. So the say you're working on this deceased list, so you're going to go track down some heirs. If is there like a critical mass where you're like, that's too many heirs to mess with, right? So maybe there's like, all right, 3 heirs, that's good, but 25 is no bueno.
Well, we've done one with 38 heirs, and we got 36 heirs, and that deal made 275,000. So it sort of depends on, and that did take 2 years, but it depends on the equity. So we will go high amount on heirs if there's a lot of equity to get that one. And actually, can I share a case study with one? Walk you through
Yeah,
it?
go right through it. Yeah, I want you to do a couple of good case studies for us here.
So this one, we pulled it up, and these were two longer lots, and we knew we could subdivide. So one of the things we also look at the value add. What is the subdividability of it, right? So we found these two lots is going to go to tax sale, owned by a Robert Hill. Sort of hard to track down Robert Hills, but anyways, so we ended up we ran title on it. There's $100,000 judgment, and then we were basically built up the tree. And one of the heirs was in Jamaica. They were spread out like 4 or 5. So we called them. We started talking to them, said, hey, there's a property owned by your father. There are some problems here. There's $100,000 hospital judgment against them. And, it's going to go to tax sale, and there's a lot of problems, and we'll buy it without title insurance.
Here, real quick, give us the kind of top line numbers. So in your process, you're starting with an evaluation. So I'm assuming you identified a retail value and you said you could subdivide this?
Yeah, to be honest, we were thinking that the retail value was about 150 to 200,000 at the time.
Okay.
We figured it out. And so we bought it about 4 years. So we made a deal with them, bought it without title insurance. And then now there's this $100,000 judgment. Judgments are good for 10 years. So we just waited for the judgment to expire. The judgment expired, and then we were able to subdivide and sell it. And we netted 275,000 on the deal.
What do you mean? That's incredible. What do you mean by the judgment expires? So you just wait long enough and you don't got to pay taxes?
Oh no, well this was a hospital judgment, right? So judgments, it's different in different states. Typically they're good for 10 years, but check your state and they expire. They can be renewed, but typically people don't renew the judgments. But here's a really cool thing. We put it into a trust. So if they would have renewed the judgment, it would have just renewed against the person because they no longer own the property. So that's one of the little things we do when we buy stuff with judge, and we know which judgments do what. So learning about that is real important also. So we did.
Wow.
We paid $5,500 for both these lots. We subdivided the first section into 5 lots, sold that for $350,000. And then we still have the 5 lots behind it. So once they build the houses, now these lots behind it aren't buildable because the road never got put through. But once they build the houses, we're going to see if we can sell those lots to the people that have the houses in front for a bigger backyard. Even if we get $5,000 or $8,000, there's some extra money on that.
Wow.
So that was a lot of research, tracking down the heirs, building the trees, getting the family affidavits, and then just waiting the judgment out. Now we made most of our money on appreciation because we held it for 4 years. So the market appreciated. So that's why it was such a good deal.
Yeah, that's pretty long term. Do you have a good system around quantifying your soft costs in these deals? I imagine that you're paying an attorney at some point, all these expenses from VAs on up.
Typically our average deal costs us anywhere from $20,000 to $25,000 per deal. That's basically our cost plus attorney's fees.
Does that include acquisition or just the?
That's acquisition.
Okay.
All the overhead. So every deal you can probably put 25 grand on is what has to come out just for the overhead, the research, the acquisitions.
Yeah, so this appears to be more of a brown belt or black belt investing scheme, but I appreciate it for a number of reasons. One, you're dealing with probably lower competition. I've met other people that do similar things to you, but I've never met 2 people doing the same thing really in the same state. I'm sure they're out there, but the hold time, I'm sure, can be a bit of a challenge.
Yes.
I imagine, like, all right, if you're talking to a regular flipper or even me on a subdivision or an improvement project, we're almost always looking to at least double our total investment. For you, it's more complicated, right? Because you're trying to estimate the soft costs, the hold times. There's also a probability that it maybe doesn't pan out, right? The way,
Yeah.
like, even if you've been through it a few times and you feel like you fully grasp it, maybe there's some errant judge or somebody who steps in and decides this isn't going to go through. So when you're looking at properties and you're looking at acquisition value to retail, do you have a set formula there, or is this just so complicated it always comes down to a case by case basis?
It's more of a case by case basis. The goal, of course, is to have as little money involved and have a giant return. That's the goal, but it's more case by case.
Hmm.
Which ones we take on.
Okay. And if you put together a pretty detailed spreadsheet when you're analyzing this sort of stuff, you're like, all right, here's my acquisition, the hold time, three closings or whatever because of different errors. I mean, have you been able to? I'm just trying to think. Every time I try to underwrite a deal, it always ends up being this complex headache of a spreadsheet, and no two deals are the same, so they're never really the same spreadsheet that I can use over and over again. Is that your method for quantifying this?
We sort of rank the deal. We'll look at, we ask questions like how long we think it's going to take to payday, how much money we're going to have invested, how much my time, how much team time, the likelihood of success, and the pain in the ass factor. And it's a guess. It's sort of
Yeah.
like, you start with the equity and then you factor in this stuff, and we just guess with the rankings. Each deal will have a ranking anywhere from 1 to 5, so we know. So it's not scientific. It's sort of more like guesstimates on which ones we take on.
Interesting. So the every investor that I've talked to, especially if you have sort of a more unique strategy like yourself, there's always different bottlenecks, right? So what are the main bottlenecks in your business? And actually, maybe even before that, do you have a 3, 5, or 10-year goal for where you want to take your current business into the future?
Well, our goal is to do more joint ventures, because we've gotten so good at all these crazy quiet type, all this kind of stuff, understanding of excess proceeds. So our goal is to bring in more people to be joint venture partners, territorial areas, and also to do one-offs with people. Like if somebody's got a weird deal, they can't find the heirs, there's judgments, maybe a creative subdividing, just any kind of stuff like that. Since we've sort of become the experts, especially in North Carolina, we want to do more joint venture. So that's the goal basically, is to grow the business. So hopefully we can make tons of money someday.
Yeah, I mean that's smart, right? So if you build the system, you know how to be the operator or hell, ideally the advisor, right? I mean, if
Yes.
you can play the advisor role, that's what we've really tried to do in our funding company is put on an advisor hat, take the work gloves off and really monitor projects and try to identify where the headaches are going to occur and prevent them. And that's invaluable to the newer people, right? So, well, you're on my podcast. That's a good step. But are you doing anything else to sort of cast the net out and say, "Hey, I can tackle these complex deals"?
Yeah, I'm putting stuff out on social media a lot, and then I'm networking in North Carolina with a lot of different investors, because they run into these deals where they can't find the heirs, they can't put it together, they don't know how to work the judgment. So I'm just doing a lot of networking throughout at events and things like that to bring in deals.
Yeah, I mean that's a smart move, right? If you can shake a hand, look someone in the eye, and say, I do something a little more complicated than you, then it usually piques interest in motivated investors.
Yeah, most people won't do a deal with 20 something heirs and judgments and things like that.
Yeah, I think the wise ones will, and especially if you've gotten out of that like barely maintaining flipping style, right? Where you're kind of living deal by deal and you're always stressing out and you have a little bit more comfort, you have a little bit more padding, and then you can extend your time horizon a little further out. And these deals then start seeming a little more viable, right? Well, let me step back. I probably should have started here, right? But before we get into the next case study, I'm curious, how did you get into this? Are you an attorney or
No, just by like going to events, talking to attorneys, just by doing, like, we started working to these tax delinquents and even foreclosures, and we're like, well, the person's deceased, what do we do? And then it was just asking questions, and the attorney says, well, you got to look for estates, you got to build, you follow in the testate laws. It was just sort of jumping in and doing it. and finding problems. And here's the biggest thing. It's like, there's a great book called The Obstacle is the Way.
Yep.
And that is so true. Finding a problem and finding a way around to get through where most people don't want to do, whether there's like, again, judgments, partial interest, just all sorts of weird stuff. And then just sort of studying, talk, like we spend a lot of time with attorneys. I just was on our meeting with my attorney where we line up all our deals and we talk through them. And so it's that's how we got into it, was like just because of the problems, and even attorneys saying you can't do that, it has a judgment, you can't do that because of this, you can't buy out of partial interest, and it's like, well, why not, and then it's just learning all this stuff, and that's also how we got into excess proceeds and things like that. Was a deal that went bad.
Interesting. Well, you keep dropping the A word, and a lot of people are not big fans of attorneys, or they get overwhelmed if they encounter a land situation where they need to involve an attorney. And I've personally struggled to find what I would consider investor-friendly attorneys, not necessarily by price, though that is a factor, but mostly in like creative thinking, right? Like every time I talk to an attorney, I shouldn't say every time, but very commonly, I'll call an attorney with a specific problem. I'll go over it with them, and I'll just ask them a series of questions, and they're giving me these sort of rote answers. Well, this is what the law says. Well, this is what the law says. They almost never volunteer a creative solution. So I just keep talking to them, bringing up creative solution after creative solution, and then finally we end up landing on one. So have you how did you find attorneys that are real estate friendly? And did you have sort of a rubric that you went by in order to determine what would qualify them to work with you?
It was just asking people, asking everybody who's a good attorney, who's creative, and then just trying a bunch of attorneys and finding out that most of them don't fit that thing. You got to find an attorney who likes the challenge, who's a little bit unique, because most attorneys don't like this kind of stuff. 90% of them will tell you go to hell. They're just like, I'm not going to do this deal. So it's just sort of like trial and error, asking other people. Yeah, that's how we, like, I'll give you a quick example. We ended up buying half of this property one time. We got a 50% interest, and we're trying to get the other 50% before the foreclosure went through. And the guy, we even offered him over retail price for his half. He wouldn't do it. So like, I guess we didn't get anything. So later we had a meetup, and this attorney, Cameron Scott, was speaking. And afterwards I went up to him and I told him about the deal. Oh, we got half the property and we couldn't get the other half, and it went through the sale. He says, well, you can get, what did it sell for? And I said, well, it sold for a lot more than than was owed. He said, you can get excess proceeds. I'm like, what the hell is that? He said, that's the overage, and I do those. So now we have a whole wing of excess proceeds where we'll try to buy out the property, go into a tax sale or foreclosure sale, let it go through the sale and collect the excess. So we have this whole wing that came from this one meetup, one attorney. We've had deals as high as $140,000 profits on excess proceeds.
And can you explain excess proceeds?
Excess proceeds is, let's say somebody's going to tax sale, and let's say 20,000 is owed in the tax sale, but it sells for 120. The excess is that difference, that 100,000. Now you also have to check for judgments, because those will come out too. So you take whatever it sold, whatever that it started at, the tax sale started 20,000 minus any judgments. That's the excess, and whoever owns that at the end of the sale gets all the excess. So we're able to buy out sometimes 50%, get 50% of the excess, or buy out all the stuff, let it go to the sale, and then we collect the whole excess. So now we have a whole wing of excess proceeds that we do.
So explain this to me again. So you had a 50% undivided interest, I'm assuming, in this property. Okay. It sells at a tax sale. You qualify for this, what is it, excess?
Excess or overage, yeah.
Excess or overage. And you received all of it?
We got 50% of it, and
50% of it.
Got 50% of it, yeah.
Okay, so you got what was according to equity. So you were able to make profit just off that?
Yep. And
interesting.
That came from a failed deal. A lot of times these obstacles or problems will lead to really cool solutions.
Yeah, wow, that's something I didn't know about. We've had a tendency to explore the complicated. I always like the School of Hard Knocks. I'm working on my master's there, and I found that's the way, just like you were talking about. You just kind of go through it step after step. And every time we encounter a hiccup or a headache or a nightmare, I like first have this gut like sinking moment where I'm like,
Yes.
oh my God, this is not how this was supposed to go, you know? And then I try to reorient myself. I'm like, okay, well, in every bad situation, there's an opportunity. And if I can learn a
Exactly.
lesson,
Yes.
I have knowledge that the next investor doesn't. And in a market right now where there's, I don't know, actually, I think it's kind of dwindling, but there was a huge spike in the number of land investors just blasting out mail at absurd prices, not ever able to close anything. And they really kind of mess with the land market in a lot of areas that I operate in. So a lot of the deals that the cream that would rise to the top were these problem deals. So that is just such a cool way to set yourself apart and continue a lead flow. So back to the attorneys real quick. Now, what could be very overwhelming if someone were to start working through a complicated deal where they needed an attorney is just handling all the fees. Have you found any attorneys that would work with you on any sort of profit share for these deals?
That's a good idea. We probably could do that, but we do so much of the work for the attorneys, whether it's building the tree, getting the documents, that the fees aren't typically outrageous. Like a real messy close might be a couple $1,000s, you know. If we're doing a quiet title, it might be 5 grand, you know, adverse possession, maybe 6 or 7 grand. So it's not too bad. But that's a good idea to bring in an attorney as a percentage of it, especially if the fees are going to get high. But we haven't had any really super high fees on any of our deals so far.
Well, that's interesting that you've created a team that will do that legwork and you'll have an attorney that's accepting of that. Because my
Yeah.
experience has been a lot of attorneys will they know how they get paid, right? They want their billable hours. So if you tell them, hey, this is dumb work, I can have some VA accomplish the vast majority of this, they'll scoff, or they'll say, well, my rate is $200 an hour, and that I want to get paid $200 an hour to do that same work. So I guess that would be a great part of finding a real estate investor friendly attorney would be to ask them if you're able to do the dirty work and just have them do the stuff that only an attorney can do.
Yeah, and then it helps them. We'll prep all the stuff for them with all the trees, all the desks, all this kind of stuff. So it makes it it makes them more likely to take our cases than if they have to do all the stuff themselves. So
Interesting. And to just dig a little deeper here so that I understand, do you work with one attorney, 10 attorneys? Do you need them in different counties effectively? How do you break
we
that
have
down?
about 7 or 8 different attorneys. Like if we're going to sue somebody, we use Greg Thompson. We've got, if we do a quiet title, adverse possession, color title, we'll use this one attorney. We have this one attorney we use. He's really good for advice, but he's slow as hell. So we develop different attorneys for whatever we're doing. Like we're suing for specific performance. We have one attorney that does that. So we have multiple attorneys for different things.
That makes sense. So, and those sorts of relationships you can only develop over years. I mean, how long have you been doing this?
I started in 2000, lost everything in 2008, started back in
Nice.
2016. So we developed those relationships over years with different attorneys, and we still churn through some attorneys. It's hard to keep certain ones for a long period of time. So
Yeah, makes sense. And I guess that's probably a good idea to meet those attorneys at real estate meetups, right? I guess that's by definition where they would hang out.
that's where we gotten some really good ones, and just recommendations.
hmm hmm All right. Well, I don't want to miss out. I asked you to give me a couple case studies here. So I think we have time for one or two more. Do you want to walk us through? I would say it would be good to walk us through a deal gone very right and a deal gone wrong. I'd be interested in hearing
Okay.
both of those.
Oh, I'll tell you, we like a lot of creative subdividing and a lot of. I'm going to share some. I go by Uncle Karl, some Uncle Karl math here. 1 plus 1 divided by 3 equals 4. Does that sound right?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, great.
So what happened was it starts out the property tax delinquent dead person. We bought this one lot, okay, and then we always look around to see how we combine other land and all sorts of, you always got to look in the area to see if you can buy another lot, re-subdivide it. So it's hard to fix. We had this one lot, then we noticed there's another lot on the corner, and we're like, wait a minute, if we can get this other lot, then could we get 4 lots facing the other roads? We add 1 lot, 2 lots, and the way they were, I'd have to show you the thing, but we're able to take it and subdivide it into 3. So it's 1 lot plus 1 divided by 3 facing the other street. We ended up with 4 lots. So we made $166,000 on that deal just by going to the zoning and say, hey, if I buy this one, combine it, can we do this? They're like, yeah. So we take everything through a value add play, every single deal like that. I'll do another one real quick. There's another lot that was 100 foot of frontage, and you need 60 foot of frontage. So we're like, okay. And there's another lot next to it's 100 foot, and another one on the other side. So we're like, if we can buy either of those lots, we can combine them, and we got 3 lots. Well, the guy on the left, he was from New York. That's all I need to tell you. That didn't. Other people were going to build a house. So we're like, this brilliant plan. We got this other lot, and we got it for a decent price. We got it for $45,000. We're like, oh wow, what are we going to do now? But we figured out we could buy 20 feet by 30 feet from the neighbor, because all you needed was the frontage. So we paid 20 grand for that 20 by 30
Ugh.
feet. Combined it. Yeah, they knew we needed it, so they
Yeah.
charged that. But we got extra lot out of it that we sold for 69,000. So that was extra, basically close to $40,000 by just buying that little 20 by 40 piece. So we go through all these things and always looking at how we can subdivide stuff up, how we can buy land from other people, and how we can maximize it. So that's one thing I would recommend people, especially in the cities and stuff. That's a great way to always be looking for the value add all the time. Does it happen very often? Maybe once in every 30 pieces we look at, but it's a quick checklist to do that. So I would recommend that for everybody. That's to really know your zoning, know the units, and see how you can combine and lots and stuff all around there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of at the, if I were to try to define what a true real estate investor is, it's someone that can find something undervalued or add value. So if you have an eye for both of those techniques, and some people specialize in one and some people specialize in others, but there's no reason you can't know both, especially if you know an area pretty well. I think where people fail is when they're trying to operate businesses across multiple states and all sorts of different counties, and then there's no way to be an expert, right? So for someone like you that's specializing in North Carolina, I mean, that gives you so much more of an ability to have a thorough understanding of where these value adds can come into play.
Yeah, but we got really good surveyors and really good, over the years, developed these relationships of people that really know, that are experts. So I say this all the time, that the reason we're so freaking smart is because we got these experts that can show us these things. It's, we've learned a fair amount, but it's knowing how to reach out. Like if I want to do a variance, real quick, I'll tell you about this piece of property. We got this one piece of property one time that was too small to build on. We're like, what are we going to do with it? So we just kept asking around, oh, we can't do anything with this. Maybe we'll put a garage on it, And then somebody said, you might be able to do a variance. We're like, what the hell is a variance? It's just being curious. Like, what can we do with this? And they were like, that's where they moved the setbacks out. And I'm like, well, who does that? So we asked a lot of attorneys, and they said, this guy, David Murray, does variances. So I called David Murray up and said, hey, I got this small piece of property. What can I do with it? And he said, well, I can get a variance done. And I asked him, well, how do I go about it? He says, you get a survey and you write me a check for $5,000. Like, okay. It was that simple. So we had this whole wing now of variances we do. And one of them we made 123,000 on. We made some big things, but that's another example that having that expert and just like running into a problem and going, what do I do with this? I can't do anything. Well, it's legal lot of record for 1992. You can get a variance on it. And so we have a little wing of variances now that we do. And that's like finding the problems and just finding the right people to help you through it. I think can make a big difference in your business.
Yeah, I always joke, like I have $1 million cell phone, and it's only because I'm not afraid to pick it up. As long as you're able to pick up a phone, call whoever it is, or if you don't even know, just call who you think might be the most related. So, all right, I'm going to call the city because I have this question. All right, who do I
Yeah.
talk to? Planning and zoning. Okay, I call planning and zoning. Ask them the same question. They say, well, that's more of an issue for Bill. Okay, what's Bill's number? Then you call Bill, and he's like, well, that's actually this person.
Right.
So if you can spend 30 or 40 minutes on a phone, you can solve a ton of these problems just by being patient, kind, clearly asking
Yep.
what the solution to your problem is, and not being afraid to push back a little bit as well. I mean, that's one of the things that I've realized when you're working with any sort of bureaucrat is they're going to tell you no if something is complicated. So sometimes you have to be like, all right, so I understand you said that this isn't viable, but theoretically, just in this other imaginary way, how would this get solved, right?
Yep.
Um, and I've had a lot of success that way. So, I think that's a good point, and that's another separating factor between the average investor and the expert is someone who's just not afraid to spend an hour solving a problem with his cell phone and talking to 30 people and looking dumb and talking to the wrong person and waiting on hold.
Yep.
I
That's what
mean,
it takes.
it's endlessly valuable. And then if you're really smart, you'll take notes on those conversations and identify who you need to contact in the future.
One thing that helps us out, we have a breakthrough, like with all my joint venture partners, we have a breakthrough meeting like once a week where we take the deal and we bring in several different people and we just try to figure out how to get it through, how to get it through to the finish line. And I'll give you another example. This was a piece of property going to tax sale. It was owned by a Marva Frazier, right? So we're trying to track Marva Frazier down. And we call a number in Texas. And she goes, I wish you people stop calling me. You got the wrong Marva Frazier. And we knew it was a double lot, right? So we're like, okay, how can we find this Marva Frazier? So we kept looking. We're like, what are we doing wrong here? Says, let's skip trace every landlord, right? We can't find her. So we skipped trace every landlord, called them. And one of them said, her name's Marva Frazier. It's Marva Lot. Women get remarried, change their
Yeah,
name.
change the name. Yep.
So now we were on the right trail. A lot of people were chasing this deal. So then we're going, okay, let's find Marva Lot. So we go on her Facebook page, and we read every single person that she's talking to. Well, she's talking to a Dorcas Rouse. Okay. So we called Dorcas. That was her sister, and she had passed away 9 months ago. They didn't even know about this property in North Carolina, and they were going to lose it. So long story is we talked about their options. She said it's best for you to pay the taxes, open the estate, and sell it to somebody besides us, and you'll make a lot more money. I even told them that you'll make a lot more money if you do this. They're like, well, we don't have the money. We don't want to open the
Hmm.
estate. We don't want to deal with it. They deeded us the property for no money, promised to pay them up front that we would clear the title and get everything done and pay them like 15,000 or something when we got it done. So we got deeded the property, we cleared the title, we got subdivided into two and everything. And I think that was around like $150,000 profit. And they got money on something they never would have known about.
Yeah.
Never would have known about. And it was a lot of work clearing the title and doing the stuff because she had passed away. So that's these breakthrough meetings that we figured that out in our breakthrough meeting. So again, it all goes back to this kind of experts, the breakthrough, the talking these big cases through can be really, really big paydays. And it's fun. We're like day treasure hunters trying to solve
Yeah.
this puzzle, and
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. Well, we're getting close to the top of the hour here. Can you mentioned JV a few times. How can people reach out to you if they have complicated deals in North Carolina? And I guess, are there any other states that you're looking at right now?
we'll go in any state. We're
Okay.
best in North Carolina, but we got attorneys and different stuff in other states. So we're not as good there, but yeah. So I'll give you my phone number. It's this is my business number. It's sort of
Okay.
acting up right now. It's 704-777-7777. So that's pretty easy to remember, all sevens. And my personal number, and we put the 704-995-5385. It's best to text me on my personal number. I'm having trouble with my AI integration with my 777 number because people call it, they think we're taxi cabs. I mean, it just just, it's a pain in the ass. So, I mean, But yeah, also one thing I like to tell people, there's also all these other stuff between we're doing adverse possession where somebody's owned the property for 20 years, but the title wasn't passed down right, and we're tacking on to that. We're doing color of title. We're suing people for specific performance. Like if you go under contract with us, well, and you try to get out of it because you're being sleazeball, we'll sue you. I don't want to do it. I always try to work with them, but we'll sue for specific performance to make them perform. There's just so many crazy. And one last thing I'll tell you too that we like, there's a lot of lots where there are houses on them and they have mortgages. And then the house the city bulldozed it because it needed repair, right? So there's these lots still sitting out there with mortgages. We have a technique where we've been 100% successful so far in getting the mortgages removed from
Because the house is gone?
the house is gone, and we file different legal action against the banks, and they don't put up a fight usually, because think about it, it's usually tax delinquent, so the taxes are going up. It's just land.
Yeah.
Well, this land is now worth money, especially in the inner cities. So we've been able to file these quiet titles and other stuff to get those released. So that's there's so many really cool different stuff out there that I think a lot of people don't talk about or think about. But if you can figure these things out, because we've probably done 7 or 8 of those deals where the people practically give them to us, because they got mortgages on there and the taxes, and then we go get the mortgages removed. So just another little cool thing that people can do.
Yeah, that's smart. We went through a period of time where we identified a few HOAs that would waive the back due taxes or cut them really low. So we would negotiate based off of the current dues, and then once we bought it, we would call them and get them dropped down to 10% or whatever, and that's where most of the money came in on the deal. So, I mean, that's brilliant. Karl, thank you so much for your time today, man. I'm going to probably get this published quick, so hopefully folks are reaching out to you real quick. I'll get your phone number put down in the description below, so if folks want to reach out to you, they can call your 777 line 30 times in a row and then call your cell phone. Folks, as usual, if you need help funding your land flip development project, whatever it might be, reach out to www.landpartnerfunding.com. I will answer you. We look forward to hearing you on the next one. Thanks, Karl. Appreciate your time today.
Cool.